A phone call came in, but there was only silence. No voice, no words, just dead air. When police got to the house in rural Ohio, they found something they were not ready for. A young man with a gunshot wound to the head, barely alive. His mother and younger brother both shot dead inside their own home. What happened that afternoon did not just destroy a family. It shook everyone who had once seen them on national television as a perfect old-fashioned family.
Values of the Stockdale family band.
It's a hard life, but it's a good life. That's the country life, been good to me.
In 2008, the Stockdale family was introduced to millions of viewers on the show Wife Swap. They stood out right away, dressed in matching outfits, holding bluegrass instruments, smiling wide for the camera. They looked like they had stepped straight out of a different century. Producers were actually looking for a religious family that played bluegrass. The Stockdales were exactly what they had hoped to find. They were not just musical, they lived by strict values and rules that most families would not even consider.
The Stockdale family.
Their 4 sons, Calvin, Charles, Jacob, and James, were raised with intense discipline. There were no video games, no television, and absolutely no dating. They were homeschooled and taught to follow strict rules, with their days filled with farm work, music, and religious study. Inside the Stockdale house, life was not just strict. It was controlled down to the minute. Kathy, the mother, believed strongly in structure. She had rules for everything. If the boys were late to breakfast, they were fined. If they wanted to listen to the radio, they had to earn it with chores. The boys earned tokens, small discs, that they could trade in for small privileges. One of those was being allowed to listen to a family-approved radio program. It was their version of a reward system, but it felt more like a prison schedule dressed up as parenting.
We're here to sing and play for.
Kathy made it clear that leisure was not welcome in their home. She said they did not hang out with friends. In her words, there was no room for meaningless relationships. Every activity had to have a purpose, or it was not allowed. When the show Wife Swap sent Lori Tonkovich to live with the Stockdales, she walked into a home full of fear and silence. Lori tried to loosen things up a bit. She gave the boys freedom to watch television and play games. But instead of excitement, she got tears. Jacob, one of the sons, broke down crying and ran outside. That moment left Lori shaken. She followed him to see what was wrong, and his answer was chilling. He told her, through tears, that his parents had warned him he would burn in hell. He truly believed that even watching television could damn him forever. That was how deep the fear ran in their home. After the cameras left and the reality show buzz faded, the Stockdale family went back to how things had always been. They stayed mostly to themselves, focusing on music and the farm. On the outside, nothing seemed different. The boys were still performing, smiling, and playing songs together like nothing ever changed.
When the whistle blows, I gotta go. Well, mama, don't you know, well, it looks like...
But slowly, things did begin to shift. Calvin and Charles, the 2 oldest sons, had moved out. Calvin took a job at a college, and Charles was studying medicine in another state. James was now in university, and Jacob stayed behind at the farm with their parents. From the outside, it probably looked like a normal family growing up. But Jacob was still under the same roof, still living under the same pressure and control that had always existed. Kathy Stockdale kept posting happy videos online. Some showed James joking around in the snow, or the boys getting ready for a music event. They seemed cheerful, but those short clips did not show everything. Behind the smiles, something dark was building, and nobody could see it coming. On a summer afternoon in June of 2017, a 911 call came in from the Stockdale house. But the call was silent. The person on the other end never spoke and then hung up. It was enough to raise concern, so officers were sent to check on the family's rural farm in Beach City, Ohio. When police arrived, the front door was already open. One officer stepped closer and saw a figure standing inside. Before they could react, a gunshot rang out from somewhere in the house. It was loud and sudden. That sound would be the start of a horrifying discovery.
Yesterday afternoon at about 4:36 p.m., our office received a 911 call from the residents. It was a landline call, not a cell phone call. It was a hang-up call At that time, after we received the hang-up call, which we do in a number of cases on a daily basis, we responded deputies to the residence.
Inside, they found 25-year-old Jacob Stockdale lying on the floor. He had shot himself in the head but was still alive. In another part of the house, they found his mother, Kathy, 54 years old, already dead. Nearby, his youngest brother, James, just 21, had also been killed. The murder weapon was a 20-gauge shotgun, and it had belonged to the family. The truth was hard to take in. Jacob had taken the shotgun, killed his own mother and brother, and then turned the weapon on himself. The boy who once cried over watching television had now committed something almost impossible to understand. What made it all worse was how sudden it seemed. Neighbors told police they had never heard shouting or seen trouble before. The family had never been in contact with law enforcement. The day of the shootings, Tim Stockdale, the father, was not home. Calvin and Charles were away too. They had no idea what they were about to come back to. After the news broke, the family released a statement. It was heartbreaking, but what caught many people off guard was the tone of forgiveness. They said they still loved Jacob. They said they forgave him. They believed he had lost control of himself, but that he was still their son and brother. No matter what had happened, they were not going to stop loving him. Jacob survived the shooting, but barely. He was rushed to the hospital and went through several surgeries over the next year. Doctors could not save his left eye, and there were pieces of metal still stuck in his skull. His injuries were serious and left him permanently changed, both physically and mentally. In 2018, after more than a year of treatment, Jacob was officially charged with 2 counts of murder. He did not deny what happened, but his lawyers entered a plea of not guilty by reason of insanity. They claimed he was not in a sound state of mind at the time of the killings. Over the next few months, Jacob was examined by different doctors. Their goal was to decide if he was mentally fit to stand trial. One of the final reports said he did not have a serious mental illness and that he understood what he did. The judge accepted this. Jacob had to face the charges, but the trial did not happen right away. The global pandemic caused major delays, especially for cases involving psychiatric facilities. Jacob's lawyers had a hard time meeting him in person, and court dates kept getting pushed back. In time, his legal team gave up on the insanity defense. They knew it would not work anymore.
A chance to review the previous report issued by Psychodiagnostic. I am also going to be filing the not guilty by reason of insanity plea and ask the court to order the appropriate evaluations for that plea also.
In 2021, Jacob stood before the judge and pleaded guilty to the murders of his mother and younger brother. He was 27 years old at the time. His voice was quiet and he showed no emotion in court. At the sentencing hearing, the Stockdale family sent a letter to the judge. They did not ask for the harshest punishment. They asked for mercy. They said they loved Jacob and believed he had suffered too. In their words, they lost 3 people that day, Kathy, James, and Jacob. And they still saw Jacob as family. The judge said the crime was too serious for a light sentence. He gave Jacob 30 years to life in prison, 15 years for each murder, to be served one after the other.
You hear me, first of all.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, okay, and you're able to respond to me today.
Yes.
Okay, good, good. I don't want to ask any more questions beyond that. The charges here are very serious. And as a judge, my job is to make sure you get a fair trial. I mean, that's my goal on every trial. I don't prejudge anything. And I'm bending over backwards to make sure that you get a fair chance here, okay?
He said his job was to protect the public. In this case, had left 2 innocent people dead. One of the few people who was not surprised was Lori Tonkovich, the woman who had stayed with the Stockdales on Wife Swap.
Yes, sir.
Okay. In this particular case, there's been a report that has been filed in this case, and just to walk through it by Dr. Arcangela Woods, it's her opinion based on a reasonable psychological certainty that you are not suffering from a severe mental defect at this time of the charge, and she lists her reasons. She indicates it's her opinion beyond a reasonable psychological certainty that Mr. Stockdale was not suffering from a severe mental disease at the time charged.
When she heard about the murders, she told her son right away, it was Jacob. She just knew. Something about his fear and his silence had stayed with her all these years. Lori believed the strict control in the Stockdale house created a pressure that finally broke Jacob. She said they were not allowed to make choices. They were not allowed to have fun. Everything was about obedience and fear. In her mind, that kind of life could only lead to something terrible. From the outside, the Stockdales seemed like a picture of faith and order. But behind the music and matching smiles was a house filled with control and silence. What led Jacob to that moment may never be fully known. All that remains is a family torn apart. Jacob Stockdale is serving 30 years in prison. Some call him a killer. Others say he was already trapped long before that day. What do you believe caused this tragedy? Share your thoughts below. Like the video, subscribe, and let us know which case you want next.